State emergency. LGBTQ Americans given dire warning from the Human Rights Campaign. We've gotten it, folks. We've got the official alarm bell sound off. In a stark warning to queer Americans and their loved ones, the country's largest gay rights organization Tuesday issued a state of emergency over anti-LGBTQ laws passed in the United States. The Human Rights Campaign said its emergency declaration, the first in its more than 40-year history, comes after over 75 anti-LGBTQ bills have been signed into law in various states this year, more than doubling last year's numbers, which was previously the worst year on record. Get the summary. Let's take a look at the actual state of emergency. Oh, neat. Time to say I told you so, Vosh? Me? Act smug? Maybe. But not necessarily over something like this. It turns out there's not much text here. Well, the multiplying threats facing millions in our communities are not just perceived. They are real, tangible, and dangerous, HRC President Kelly Robinson said. In many cases, they're resulting in violence against LGBTQ plus people, I hate that acronym, forcing families to uproot their lives and flee their homes in search of safer states. Elections do indeed have consequences. Yeah, they certainly do. And things definitely are getting worse, you know? Elon Musk is essentially turning 4chan into poll and cultivating and boosting neo-Nazi accounts, which are, of course, extremely concerned with trans people. We saw this just the other day where in Glendale, California, there were pro-LGBTQ demonstrators. Did I say 4chan into poll? I'm sorry. I'm very hungry. I didn't even have breakfast this morning. Twitter into poll. 4chan is already mostly poll, as much as they pretend that's not the case. Pro-LGBTQ protesters protesting a school's decisions were attacked by a bunch of fascists. There were Proud Boys here. This wasn't like this isn't like a pro versus anti-LGBT thing. This is just the fascist mob of brown shirts coming in to attack them. And this is over a school board decision. This is over voting to recognize June as Pride Month, you know? The attacks from brown shirts are being leveled now against the general population. It is lowering to this point. Kathy Renna, the comms director for the National Queer Task Force, said the tsunami of political attacks means queer communities are having to fight tooth and nail on two fronts, opposing the legislation itself and safeguarding the well-being of individual queer people affected by them. This is a time when our community needs to not just come together, but redouble our efforts to fight these bills, but also to provide resources and protection. And yeah, you've all heard this talk before. The HRC said it's declaring an emergency over LGBTQ rights so people and their families in hostile states can try to better protect themselves from anti-queer hate. People traveling to or through states that have passed some of the most severe anti-queer laws should be prepared to experience homophobia, transphobia, or even violence, the organization said on Tuesday. Yeah, we've talked about all this before. We understand the gist of it. It's not just about experiencing homophobia or transphobia, you know? I mean, they want you dead, of course. Tim Pool and other conservatives were out there calling those people pedophiles. The ones who are protesting outside the school board with regards to recognizing June as Pride Month. The line for conservatives is, if you are trans or pro-trans, then you are pro-pedophilia/grooming, because being trans is being a pedophile or grooming. There is a direct line for these. So being trans or pro-trans means you have to be in support of pedophilia or grooming, and therefore, because pedophiles deserve to die, violence against them is defensive violence protecting your children from pedophiles. This is explicitly the line of logic. See? Yeah, thank you for my own subreddit. Dads are starting to rise up against the leftist pedophiles. Now, of course, by dads, what he's referring to here is Andy No and the Proud Boys, brown shirts, who want you dead. Not dads. These were not like local community members who were protesting the school board's decision. They came there prepared for violence. I mean, there's literally a skinhead right here. Like, the one visible face we see is the most skinhead guy you've ever seen in your life. staring at the camera, but that's the cop. Oh, is that? Oh, you're right. He's wearing the vest and everything. I stand by my statement. Thank you. Considering the fact that the cops were apparently, as they always do, siding with the fascists at this confrontation, not explicitly, but in this little, bit by bit way. I will never forget and will always be haunted by those behind the scenes videos we got back during the Black Lives Matter protests, where police officers were openly planning and talking and being friendly with the fascists. Where, like, in the back corners where they were chilling, there were Proud Boys and there were cops just right next to each other, shit talking the protesters, talking up each other, talking about what they wanted to do. There is a distinct class character to cops, to say the least of it. All these people are well known too. Yeah, it's brown shirts. This is Capitol insurrectionist Adam Kiefer and serial harasser Tony Moon. It's brown shirts. This is what the brown shirts did. We're following the exact same path. In Nazi Germany, the two primary fronts of Nazi advocacy in the Weimar Republic, there were two primary ones, okay? And they were the courts and they were the brown shirts. It seems weird today, but Nazism was held in high regard by the intellectuals and the upper echelons of the Weimar Republic, in large part because it was wealthy people who wanted to protect their class interests, sure, but also intellectuals who, being educated and therefore more highly invested in the state's institutions, wanted to re-engage in a sense of national pride. University professors in Nazi Germany tended to actually be Nazis, which is funny because, of course, today, like 99% of university professors who talk about anything social sciences related are likely to be left-leaning because it's impossible to know about history and not be left-leaning. That is the most left-leaning university doctrine. But also the courts were far right. In the Weimar Republic, if cases were brought to the court where a person committed a murder or raped or burned a business down or did anything to Jewish people, oftentimes the courts would let you go as long as what you did was done in the spirit of preserving German national pride. Literally, that's you can look it up. I know it sounds crazy, but that was it. Functionally, in a lot of these courts, whatever you did, up to and including murder, you would be let off if you were doing it to defend the German will. And of course, by the German will, we don't mean just the state of Germany, because the state at the time, the Weimar Republic, was not held in high regard by basically anyone. They mean the Volk, the fatherland, and these were the two wings of Nazi advocacy. You had the courts and you had the brown shirts. And the brown shirts would go around and they would beat people up and they would intimidate and they would burn businesses. And when some of them got arrested, the courts would go, they were doing it with a sincere and heartfelt passion for the Germanic people. Let them go. And that's what happened. Example, Texas Governor Abbott is pardoning people who shoot up BLM protests. Yep. We know about this case. Or the guy who was DeSantis passing the law to make it to give legal protections to people who drive their car through protesters. Like, there are a bunch of examples of these. You have the two wings. You have the brown shirts, and you have the legal elite, the intelligentsia, for to whatever extent conservatives can be accused of having an intelligentsia, to pardon them when they commit crimes. And that is how you do it. What is the solution? Win. Can you make a non-World War II analogy? No. It's literally the best comparison to make. I'll not weaken the arguments that I make for the sake of novelty. Is Bellingcat good? Bellingcat does good reporting. Yes, this was legitimately good news. The Trump-appointed judge rejecting Tennessee's anti-drag law. This law was insanely repressive and also objectively unconstitutional. So this is very good. Did you see Lonerbox's vid in this matter? Yes. Is that the judge? This is the judge. Yes. This is the Trump-appointed judge who struck down this law. That is true. Can't wait to see it appealed, go to the Supreme Court, and then be made like constitutional precedent for the entire country. That'll be fun. Should we find hope that a lot of Trump's appointed judges refuse to go through with the more insane shit a la the 2020 election stuff? Well, yeah, I think a critical distinction here between what's happening now and what happened in Nazi Germany is that the attempt to create a legal framework for the brown shirts to go off in is being done by lawmakers, not by judges. For the most part, the judges in this country, I'm not going to say they're progressive because they're not, but even like a ton of Trump appointed judges did not back his 2020 election hoax claims. So I don't think that the legal infrastructure of this country is as far along as the legislative infrastructure when it comes to the promotion of fascism. That is something that can be changed, of course. Is that because the judges are more loyal to McConnell than to Trump? No, it's because the current wave of fascist sentiment is relatively new, and it's also pretty low IQ. Again, so another comparison to Nazi Germany, something which I'm sure you're all very excited to hear, is that the Nazi political movement was a lot more wide-reaching in the sectors of society that it tried to appeal to. So if you listen to Hitler speaking, and I don't speak German, I mean, I can look at translated speeches, but that's not the same as listening to a person speaking, and you try to get a vibe for the propaganda direction the Nazi party went in, or the Nazi advocacy like groups went in before they took over the government. To put it simply, the Republican Party appeals entirely to retards and people who want tax cuts. That is it. In order to buy their shit, you have to be retarded. This is not to say the Nazis didn't lie. They did all the time. But, well, you know how those far-right trad accounts on Twitter, the ones with the Roman statue avies, will talk about, like, the greatness of Western civilization and historical canon, and look at this architecture, look at this literature, look at this blah, 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 you know? You see that stuff on Twitter, but none of it is represented in how the Republican Party promotes itself. The GOP does not have politicians who get elected as like these enlightened philosopher rulers or whatever. They all act like retards and culture war dirtbags because that's what they've gone for. Whereas the Nazi Party made an effort to appeal to like a broader kind of sort of pan-Germanic experience, right? Where, wealthy or poor, no matter what part of the country you're from, as long as you're white and Aryan, be clear, their pluralistic approach had its limits. There was like an all-encompassing reach to the type of propaganda they delivered. Again, not to say it wasn't retarded. It was. Not to say the Nazis weren't retarded. They were. Not to say they were right. They weren't. But there was a broader, let's say, aesthetic range than what the Republicans do today. And for that reason, I think that the GOP has trouble getting like legal professionals on their side. You have stuff like the Federalist Society and you have like the insanely far-right judges and lawyers and stuff. But I don't think they're that common. I really do think that the majority of judges and lawyers are not centrist, but like highly rooted in the institution. That can change, of course, with time, but any updates on Moore v. Harper? Yeah, they're not going to be ruling on it because it went back to the state. Are you saying the GOP is literally more extreme than Nazis in language, therefore does not attack legal moderates? No, I'm saying the GOP is less competent. I think that the GOP is actually done, like, considering the fact that I think the people running the GOP are like explicit fascists who are looking to bring about fascism. I think they are less competent than the Nazis were at achieving what I think is functionally the same goal in the long run. I'm glad they're less competent. That is nice.